podcast focused on trends shaping the future of manufacturing. I'm Alexandria Burek, your host, here with A.W. Schultz, two thought leaders with a passion for people and manufacturing. Today and every episode, we are diving deep into the advancements, sustainable practices, and dynamic changes transforming how we produce everything.
And now welcome Alexandria Burek and A.W. Schultz.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Factory of the Future. I'm here with A.W. Schultz. I'm Alexandria Burek. And today we are traveling back into the 80s. We're excited to talk about what was going on then and what is currently going on now in the manufacturing space. There's a lot of exciting things in the 80s. The Atari game, the McLaren being designed in the United States, however produced elsewhere, and kind of how the manufacturing jobs have really changed, how productivity has changed, and that's what we're going to spend a lot of our time talking about today. So thank you for joining us, and AW, I'll let you kick it off with some of what you found, and then we can dive into then versus now.
Yeah, well, thanks, Alexandria.
Yeah.
We, as you know, we're doing the blast from the past, looking from the 1950s all the way up to the current and to the future. And I think what Alexandria also mentioned, that we're going to try to take a perspective on where things are today, because that's what we know about, and then what was in the past. So for those that have listened to the previous episodes, the 50s, 60s, 70s, you know, we saw the 60s saw the biggest boom, and in the 1970s there started to be a slowdown, and actually in 1979, we saw the recession, where it was impacted by, you know, the steel and the automotive industry, which, as you remember in previous episodes, was the big bankers of the automotive or the manufacturing industries. And with that, there was a lot of where we were having a lot of output. There also was a lot of questions about working conditions, and transforming or going into the future of today. That's simply a topic that really comes close to a lot of what organizations are looking to address. Is that there's other options than going into the manufacturing community, and for manufacturers to draw the people, they need to have better working conditions. But back in the 1980s, the defense was, well, let's create unions and start unions. So certainly the automotive industry, the steel industries, these were some of the ways that drove the ways into that. But as if you look today, there's arguments that, you know, unions aren't necessarily as relevant as they were in the past, and because working conditions have been so much improved over it, which, you know, in for our lines of work is a good sign, because one of the other things that also led into it was, jumping back in the 1980s, that we started to lose jobs because of overseas, because the competitiveness with the cost of labor.
Well, and let me just add to that, the more labor-intensive, what would be considered dangerous jobs, were essentially offshore to other countries, and keeping, just like we're seeing today, the advanced manufacturing here in the United States. So I think the offshoring really had a big part in that, from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, that was one of the things that was a big driver into it. What was the term you used? The gold, or the rust belt?
Rust belt. Yeah. So what one of the ways that we can think about this when we're looking at then versus now is in the 80s, everything was very blue collar. It was a very hands-on type of manufacturing job. It was heavily unionized across, especially the Rust Belt, which is really starting in the Midwest and up into the East Coast, like through Pennsylvania and things like that. People didn't necessarily need much more than a high school education. They could pretty much do a high school education. Maybe there was a apprenticeship required, but usually in those careers, the manufacturing careers, skills were developed on the job, and it was considered a long-term career. Now, what we're seeing is that there's often a lot more technical certifications required if you want to work in manufacturing. Think engineering and or certificates that are kind of like the engineering light or fast track. We've talked about this on previous episodes with AW's chapter and how they're partnering with the community college, and there's these fast tracking certifications, which makes sense for the way things move today. In today's time, like AW said, there's significantly less unionization. There's a lot more automation, robotics, and lean methodology being deployed in the factories. And for that reason, while the manufacturing, quantity of jobs is lower than it's really ever been in history that we've covered on the show, it's more productive than any other time in history as well. Unfortunately, though, a lot of those hands-on blue-collar workers have been literally automated away, if not offshored. So that probably contributes to a lesser union presence and is where we're seeing a lot more technical skills. So when we had Renan on the podcast, he talked about how all manufacturing companies are becoming tech companies, right? We're seeing that what was a machine operator is now becoming somebody who's a programmer. And I think that's what we're really looking forward to if we look present to future. So, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the way to look at the people side of it. Mm-hmm. One thing to also look at is the technology side of it. And some of the things that are still being used today that we might think it's kind of, new age. One of the things that came about was 3D printing. That was back in the 1980s that was first introduced. And it's just now starting to find its relevance into the manufacturing, into regular basis on it. Now, granted, there's been advancements into it quite a bit, but it was the introduction of it, which is additive manufacturing. Also, CAD. CAD was introduced. We still use CAD today in designing. Certainly, if you're an engineer, that's very familiar with you. And there was personal computers became something that's became quite regular. And I don't know if I mentioned this already. The U.S. was originally was the Macintosh and the IBM were originally manufactured in the U.S. And for us today, we would just really balk at that. Like most of that stuff is overseas now.
Well, that goes to the technical side of U.S. manufacturing. I think when I think of U.S. manufacturing, I think of kind of some of the most advanced. I wouldn't say the best or the most, but I would say some of the most, like in the top tier of manufacturing. I'm seeing one of the things that came up is, EVs being manufactured here. Obviously, we all know about Tesla and their gigafactories and all of that stuff leading the way and kind of really challenging the status quo with what manufacturing looks like, especially within the automotive sector. But like when we had Asma on the podcast, she talked a lot about what's going on in the batteries place. Those types of manufacturing where it's so challenging and so advanced, that stuff is actually being done here in the US. Same with semiconductors. There's just like an extremely high demand for these semiconductors, and they're critical to, I believe, like most everything today. Am I correct in that, AW? So that I think is something to be proud of. Yeah, exactly. So I think we should really be proud of that. And I think it's pretty cool to think about the most advanced and skillful manufacturing jobs residing here and, producing more than ever with less than before.
Yeah, I think I shared this with you one time where I was supporting a facility in Connecticut that makes the machines that makes the microchips that are built in Taiwan. And,
Oh, wow.
yeah, and to think about, well, you say all these jobs are in Taiwan or other countries, but a lot of the highly technical, highly engineered, there's still some very relevant companies that we've just never heard of, and they're supporting other organizations. But that's kind of neat. I mean, at least for me.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting point that you bring up. And I think it's actually a little bit ironic in that the United States is manufacturing the machinery that's being exported to the other companies where the jobs have been offshored to make the goods to be reshipped back to the United States and across the globe. That's a great insight and really a valuable lesson to the listeners too. So I think there's so many different manufacturing companies that exist and contribute to our consumer goods that we just don't have a single clue are operating and kind of a part of our daily lives. That's one of the things that I was most proud of and still remain proud of at my current job. You know, we manufacture things that are in probably 95% of Americans' household, and they have no clue who our business is. Actually, I could argue one of our products is in 100% of the United States household. There's not a chance that something we manufacture hasn't landed in the homes of Americans otherwise. But nobody knows what our company is and what we do, and probably never heard of us and never will. So that's fine by me. Yeah.
Are you going to make us all look that up? Or?
No.
Okay.
It remains a secret.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're clocking. Yeah. I was going to say, I think we're clocking out.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to get out of here like finished goods.
Yep.
This is Factory of the Future, and we are out of here like finished goods. Stay tuned for our next episode of Factory of the Future, where we're exploring groundbreaking techniques and behaviors that are reshaping industrial landscapes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review and help others discover the cutting-edge insights transforming manufacturing as we know it.